So many figures have shipped this fall, but I want to talk about these four. Let's do it. Hey Toy fans, Rob here. Let's get these guys out of the box and see what they're all about. Alright Toy fans, so today we're taking a look at two different 2-packs from X-Men 97. We have Cyclops and Jean from a sort of Claremont era X-Men comics, but also the finale of X-Men 97, some costume designs there. And on the right, we've got Gambit and Rogue and their basketball clothes. I believe that was from the first episode of X-Men 97, but it's been a minute since I've watched. I know there's some concern online about Gambit using the starting lineup body mold. I never had a starting lineup figure. This is my first exposure to this mold, so we'll take a look at that together, see what works, maybe what doesn't. And I've also got a fun little thing here. I've got an old McDonald's New Jersey Nets jersey. This was a Happy Meal toy probably 20 years ago. I've just kept it for all this time. I'm going to try to put that on Gambit and see how that works, because I think the shorts will match, but will the figure match with the jersey? We shall find out. Let's take a look and see if there's any sort of blurb on the back of this packaging. We have nothing, just the character renders, and then a kind of preview of the other 2-packs available in this set. I don't yet have Wolverine and Storm, but I do plan to get them at some point. Take a look at the back of Gambit and Rogue. Should be pretty much the same, except different renders, and there we go. Just like we predicted. So that's the packaging, guys. Let's get these guys out of the box and see what they're all about. All right, toy fans, here they are out of the packaging. I think we're going to go ahead and start with Scott and Jean. We'll bring Rogue and Gambit to the side over here. This Scott and Jean are very familiar costumes if you watched X-Men 97 or if you've read Claremont era comics. This is, of course, the 70s era costumes for Scott and Jean, and they were nicely adapted in the cartoon, I think. They're pretty basic by today's standards, not so many pouches, not so much extraneous costume design, certainly a design that wouldn't last in the MCU, right? But they're great, they're classic, the colors pop, and I like the way that they look. As we look at Cyclops here, we're going to rotate him around. He does just have the standard blue body, and pretty much everywhere you see him, whatever the color plastic is that his pieces were molded in, that's the color they remain. I think the only actual painted detail on this guy is the X on his buckle and his face. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's it. So, pretty easy, I guess, for Hasbro. It would have been nice to see some paint shading. We have seen that in the past, and we'll look at a comparison there to kind of show that off in just a little bit. But then on Jean here, we have some paint applied to the face, and we've got some paint on the buckle. Unfortunately, on my buckle, it is not as centered as it could be. So that's a little bit of a drag there, but at a distance, it's not so noticeable. Outside of the buckle, the paint around the rest of her waist is applied cleanly enough. And then we have the stripes down the front of her boots, though no painted stripes on her gloves. So it looks a little incongruent. Accessory-wise, Cyclops is coming with an extra pair of hands, his blasting fingers, and then just kind of an open hand. And he's also got an extra head sculpt that, like the X-Factor Cyclops we've seen previously, has the ability to attach an optic blast. Attaching the optic blast is easy enough. You take these two pieces, just kind of plug them into each other, just like that. And then we have this little peg on the actual end of the optic blast piece. We have to remove the head that comes packaged on the Cyclops and add the one that's got a little bit of a motion added to it. Just pops right on. There we go, just like that. And then there is a hole in the visor for this Cyclops figure. So you can just go ahead and plug that visor in. Make sure that the textured side is down. That is the appropriate way to attach this. And then Cyclops is ready to do some optic blasting. Now, this optic blast is different from the one that we got with the X-Factor Cyclops. You'll notice here that there's actually some painted detail on top of the optic blast, which is a nice touch. I don't know that we really needed it, but I appreciate Hasbro doing it, and it just kind of changes things up a little bit. It actually kind of makes it look more animated, I guess, if you ask me. So, but they're the exact same blast, they do the exact same thing, and they fit both heads pretty interchangeably, which is nice. As far as the interchangeable heads for the Cyclops goes, let's pull this optic blast off. If you do happen to have the X-Factor Cyclops, these head sculpts do still fit on that figure, so I could take the neutral face for the X-Factor Cyclops and just stick it on the finale Cyclops that we have here. And see, it goes right on. The blues are a pretty close match. It looks like the X-Factor Cyclops is a little darker than the finale Cyclops, but outside of that, it works. And if we compare the head that he came with, you'll notice there is a little bit of a difference there. We have a solid, well, it's not even solid. It's a sort of a translucent, maybe like a 90% opaque piece on the head that came with X Factor Cyclops. And with this new head, we have a nice sort of uh, more translucent piece in the eyepiece. It's translucent red, so you can kind of see a little bit of color depth there. But I do think between the two, it's hard to say. With the light shining on this guy, he looks better. But at certain angles, I actually do kind of like the sort of lens look of this helmet piece or this visor piece here. It looks like something that he actually has to look through. So, your mileage may vary, but the standard version does have a visor that has actual covered ears, which is certainly a look that we've seen from the comics and on the cartoons over the years. Definitely, if we bring in the X-Men 97 standard Cyclops figure, he has his ears covered as well because that was kind of the 90s design. And while we have all these Cyclopses here, why don't we go ahead and compare them right now? We've got the finale Cyclops here on the right, and if we put the X-Men 97 Cyclops in the center, you'll see height-wise they're pretty similar. Of course, we already saw the X Factor Cyclops. This one isn't actually based on the show, but it is the same body, so pretty similar there. But let's go ahead and pull these guys out. And for those of you who've been collecting Marvel Legends for a very long time, you might have the Toys R Us exclusive 70s Cyclops, 70s, 80s Cyclops. So there's a comparison there. You see the paint shading I was talking about before. Would have been nice to see that on this figure too, but they're going for a flatter animated look, I guess. That's the excuse. They could have still done something, but anyway, it's interesting to see the differences. But if we go all the way back to the Toy Biz days, we have their 70s, 80s Cyclops, and he looks a little wonky at this point, but he's the same suit, and you can kind of see the way that different toy companies have handled the exact same look. There's been some external factors, like trying to match a cartoon. This was trying to match the comics, and so is this. I think the middle Cyclops was a better execution than what Toy Biz gave us, but this is how they got started. And I think that was even a recolor, remold of the Series 2 Namor figure, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, we're getting into the weeds. These are all of the Cyclopses we've received in the Marvel Legends line wearing this costume. What do you guys think? Which one's your favorite? We'll go ahead and measure them too, just to make sure we covered our basis. If we bring in this tape measure, you can see that this Cyclops does stand right at 6.5 inches tall, so pretty standard for the Vulcan buck and pretty standard for your slightly above average height character in the Marvel Legends line. Moving on to Jean, this figure should look a little familiar to you guys. It is actually the third time in the life of Marvel Legends that we've received this particular costume for Jean. The last time we got it was in the House of X Powers of 10 line, and you can see here the colors are a little more poppy, which is interesting when you compare it to the figure that's supposed to be based on the cartoon. Now, she did have this color scheme in the cartoon, but I do kind of think this one looks a little more cartoonish, right? And if we travel back in time even further, there was another Marvel girl in this general costume. She was in a 2-pack with Cable and was exclusive to Walmart many, many years ago, probably around 2007. And that Marvel girl was a repaint of the Rachel Gray figure that was part of the Brood wave. So some of Rachel's costume detail still exists on that figure, even though they repainted her. So it wasn't the best version of Marvel Girl, but I guess Hasbro figured, why not? We'll give it a shot. She's close enough. Between all three, though, I think my favorite is going to be the X-Men 97 version, even though I prefer the coloring of the House of X Powers of 10 version. But both of these more modern Marvel girls are really let down by their articulation. But before we get to articulation, let's bring in one more comparison for this Marvel girl. We're going to bring in just the standard X-Men 97 version. And I think it's worth pointing out that the one in the green dress does appear to stand taller than the standard Jean figure. Chalk that up to the high-heeled feet, I suppose, but just an observation. All right, let's get these other Jeans out of the way, and let's look at the articulation for this Jean a little closer. This Jean, she's got the skirt again, so her legs are a bit hindered, but they at least, I guess, tried to give us more movement. You can see her legs do come out a little farther, I think, than we got on the last one, but she's still kind of traffic coned a little bit. She's not going to move a whole lot in the legs. She also has the heels, so she's still going to be a little tricky to stand. As you can see here, if you try to pose her in any dynamic action poses, yeah, those heels are going to be a bit of a challenge. I'm trying to balance her out here. Fortunately, this figure does have holes in the bottom of her feet, so if you've got any stands, you can try to use those to assist you if you'd like I did with the old House of X Powers of X Jean, but there we go, we've got her standing. We're going to break down the entire articulation, though, with this hair piece, which looks fantastic, by the way. Look at all the hair strands that are sculpted in there. Her head rather, doesn't turn as much as it could. It is limited. And of course, you can't look up really at all. You're going to have to rely on the waist articulation for this figure. She can sort of look down. Her arm will rotate all the way around. Oh, there we go. And she's got a bicep swivel. She's got double jointed elbows that collapse pretty nicely. And her hand does rotate all the way around. And then, of course, we're talking about the torso here. She's got neck articulation because of the way the head's attached, but that's it until we get to the waist. There's no diaphragm, nothing in the center, no butterfly joints. And as far as the waist goes, she's able to bend over, not so much. And then look, it's even springing back a little bit. You can lean her back better, actually. She does have a little bit of a hip action there. And then her legs will go forward only about that far. Well, we can stretch it. I don't want to split the skirt too much. Her legs will go forward that far. Her leg can rotate all the way around at a thigh cut that is hidden by the skirt. Her legs will bend back, or her knees rather, will bend back that far. So that's pretty great. And then she doesn't have any boot cut. Her foot will go forward that far and go down that far. And she's got ankle pivot. So uh, win some, lose some with the articulation on this figure. You're just going to have to be patient when you're trying to pose her. But let's talk about her accessories next. Jean comes with two different head sculpts. One's a little more relaxed, one's a little more grimacing and has more wind-blown hair. She's got two sets of fists and two open hands. And then she has these swirly blue telekinetic effect pieces that we've seen before used for other characters who have magic powers. But in case you haven't seen these before, there's no wrong way to attach these to the figure. You just kind of swirl them around the wrist, and however they lay is however they lay. But you can make it look like she's using her abilities, casting them off of her hand. So those are the accessories that come with Jean, and that's Scott and Jean. Let's go ahead and take a look at that other 2-pack we have here tonight. All right, toy fans, now we've moved on to Basketball Gambit and Basketball Rogue. And I'll just say before we dig into it, I think these figures are a really fun idea on the surface. Did the execution work out? Let's find out. We're going to go ahead and start with Gambit. Let's take a closer look at Gambit. So this is that starting lineup body that I had mentioned previously. This was a figure line that Hasbro started a couple years back, maybe as many as 4 years ago. I feel like it was around the pandemic, where they were offering NFTs with NBA basketball figures. And those figures would originally have a jersey over the torso of the figure, which kind of hides some of the articulation. And you'll see that the break that we have on this Gambit figure is pretty severe. It doesn't look great at all. You want to be careful when you're posing this guy to just make sure he doesn't look like a broken human, I guess. You can kind of crunch him a little bit, but really from behind, he's not going to look that great. So I have a fix I want to try in just a little bit to maybe kind of hide that. But as we look at the rest of the figure here, I do like the new head sculpt that this Gambit has. He's got the bandana like we've seen both in the comics, and I think we even saw it on the 90s cartoon pre-97, X-Men 97. And it's a really nice head sculpt. It's got the long hair, which never makes sense with Gambit, that he's got long hair, but at the same time, he can have this like wind-blown spiky sort of design at the same time. Explain to me, what hairstyle does that look like when you don't have the headstock on and when you don't have the bandana on? How does that work? But, it's classic Gambit, classic 90s Gambit. He doesn't have a lot of muscle definition in the arms, the torso, or the legs. But that's probably because this figure started life as an NBA figure and not really intended to be a chiseled superhero. But I gotta say, this look doesn't bother me that much. It does when it comes to articulation, but just looking at it, I don't think it's that bad. And I know people are going to have complaints, and you are absolutely right to have those complaints. But if I'm just looking at this guy vanilla posed, I don't know. I don't hate it. I like that he's got the basketball stuck in his right hand. But of course, there are interchangeable hands that you can actually swap out with the two that are actually on the figure out of the box. I think for me, and call me nitpicky, the biggest thing sticking out to me about this figure, aside from the awkward torso articulation, are the shoes. This is supposed to be Gambit from 1997, and there is no way, I'm not a sneakerhead, but there is no way shoes that looked like this existed in 1997. But Hasbro used the parts that they already had, and that's what Hasbro does. If they make more basketball figures in the future, which I'm okay with, maybe they can do a few more custom parts as they knock out Bishop and Wolverine and all the other people who played the game in that first episode. Let's take a look at Gambit's accessories. Taking a closer look at the basketball hand, you can see it is an actual sculpted, painted basketball, and it's just permanently glued onto the gloved hand of Gambit. While I do like that he's got the ball glued into his hand, I think it would have been nice to have just a basketball all to itself. He's got sort of a relaxed left hand, a pointing left hand, a right hand with the fingers extended, and a left hand with the fingers extended. Articulation wise, Gambit's got a head that can rotate all the way around, but he's got this double neck system here, double barbelled neck system that kind of gets messed up when you turn the head, so you want to be careful with that. I think the intention behind this neck is that he can lean his head more to the left and more to the right, but the joint doesn't really end up working that way, so I wish there was a different system in place there at the neck. His shoulder can rotate all the way around, and he does have a full bicep swivel as well. He does have some butterfly joints that are really stiff on this guy. We can put his shoulders back just a little bit and he can bring them forward. He's got a double jointed pinless elbow, which is nice. He's got full rotation at the wrist, and his hand is capable of going back and down that much. Get some nice shooting hands there with the basketball. Again, his torso is a bit of an eyesore, but he does bend forward very far and bend back unnaturally far. He does have some waist rotation that kind of meets with the top line of his shorts. It does kind of break the sculpt of the figure a little bit if you turn him too much. He's got legs that can go forward that far. They actually kind of swing out a little bit more than they do just go straight forward. He can go out, or his legs rather, can go out that far. His knees are double jointed and they do bend all the way back. And then he's got rotation at the sock. And then his foot is capable of going forward, not as much as you would think. Come on, focus up there, camera. And then back decently far, and he does have ankle pivot. So that's the articulation for this figure. Got some nitpicks, like I said. Wish the butterfly joints worked better than they do. And of course, I'm going to bang the drum about that ab crunch. It doesn't look pretty, but it's functional. All right, the jersey. Does it fit? Well, I'm going to pull off the hands and the head of this figure. We're going to do a cut, and let's find out. Well, unfortunately, that jersey is too big. Could have worked out really well, but as you can see, this is just too baggy. Oh well, we tried something different. You know what? This kind of works, though. Just pretend the Wolfpack debuted in 1997 and not 98. This shirt comes from a Target-exclusive WWE Mattel Lex Luger figure. Alright, height-wise, this Gambit does come in right at 6 3/4 inches tall. For some size comparison, here is the standard X-Men 97 Gambit, and as you can see, height-wise, they're about the same height. Now, some people are probably going to wonder, can you do head swaps with the 97 Gambit? Well, let's find out. So, one thing worth mentioning on this Gambit figure, the ponytail is in danger of getting broken off. I mean, it's a nice soft plastic, so it's not really going to fall off that easily, but I'm not able to press the head on because of the ponytail. So that's one swap that's probably best to avoid. But can we put the cowled head on the basketball figure? Looks like you can. I don't think it works that well. And the ball peg for the starting lineup figure is smaller than the standard Gambit figure. So this head comes right off. But how about another swap? We have all of these amazing Gambit hands that came with the basketball figure. Can we swap them between the figures? Can we have Gambit holding a basketball in his X-Men costume? Or could we have the basketball Gambit throwing cards? Let's find out. And you'll notice there the wrist detail for these gloves does tend to fall off, so just make sure you're keeping an eye on it when you're swapping hands. But let's put this basketball hand on Gambit. Hey, look at that. X-Men Gambit has no trouble at all holding a basketball. Let's see if we can throw some cards with our starting lineup figure. Hey, look at that, toy fans. Basketball Gambit can go from shooting hoops to beating troops pretty easily. All of those hands are interchangeable. Let's move on to Rogue. Alright, so here we have Rogue, and I guess I wasn't paying attention very closely, but I kind of just thought that this jumpsuit she was wearing was going to be pretty similar to the jumpsuit she already has on underneath her jacket. But as you can see, as I bring in the standard X-Men 97 Rogue, There's really no similarities between these two jumpsuits aside from them being green and yellow. So nice attention to detail there on the figure. Articulation wise, there is no surprises on this basketball rogue figure. She's got the standard rotation at the shoulders, bicep swivel, pinless double jointed elbows. Her wrist will spin all the way around. She's got the standard female diaphragm joint there underneath her shirt. And then her legs go forward that far, back that far, out from the body that far, thigh swivel, double jointed pinless knees, and then she has a foot that does go forward that far, back that far, and she has an ankle pivot. Note that there is a belt attachment, or I guess it's the top of her shoes, that's kind of floating there above her ankle, but it doesn't get in the way of articulation at all. And this shirt, if you were curious, does not get in the way of articulation at all either, with how small it is and where it's placed. One benefit of the shirt that I've noticed is if you pull off the head, this is still the standard Hasbro female body, and on the back here are those needless holes that most of the time the women don't even need to use in the Marvel Legends line. So I'm glad that we actually get to cover that up this time. So that's a bonus for the cloth goods on this figure. But since we have her head off, I know a lot of people want to see some head swaps with this Rogue figure. So let's go ahead and bring in the 97 Rogue one more time. And we're going to pull her head off and see how she looks on the standard 97 body. Oh, it is a tight fit to get that on there. It works. You know, I don't know that it needs to be on this figure. I think the head that 97 Rogue had already works out well enough. Of course, with the size of the hair, there's not a lot of articulation you're going to get looking up. It's just hindered, but it will look left and right, and I should have swirled it on the basketball figure. Let's do another head swap. Does this basketball Rogue head fit on the retro Rogue body? And not quite. The way the collar of the figure is designed and the way the hair is designed in the head, you can't really snap it on as tightly as you need to. And really, if you press it on hard enough, Rogue's going to kind of be stuck looking slightly diagonally down. It's hard to explain. It's not a good fit. So let's check out a different figure. Here's the basketball Rogue head on the Savage Land Rogue body. And while this head does actually snap on pretty comfortably, the skin tones don't match. But you know, with the right lighting, or if you're a customizer, you could probably make this one work. So now you know. And in case you guys were curious, you can pull the soft goods off of the Rogue basketball figure if that's what you want to do. Just be a little careful pulling it off. It seems like if it gets stretched too much, it might rip. But this is what the figure looks like without the soft goods on top of her. And for all intents and purposes, she's just a standard Rogue figure with a slightly different costume design. Height-wise, Rogue does stand right about 6.5 inches tall. And for some size comparison, let's bring in all of the new friends we've made today. Here are all 4 figures we've looked at today, and I went ahead and threw in XMen 97 Wolverine. I think the height differences all check out. Alright, toy fans, well that's my look at the Scott and Jean 2-pack and the Basketball Gambit and Rogue 2-pack, part of the XMen 97 figure line from Hasbro in 2025. There was a lot to take in with both of these 2-packs. I think each one of them has a figure holding it back overall. In the case of Scott and Jean, that Jean figure, while it's nice to have options with the heads and the hands, action figures with high heels are always going to frustrate me. Combine that with the limited articulation of the figure design, and it leaves a little something to be desired. But that classic Dave Cockrum, John Byrne era Cyclops figure, well, he hits the mark pretty nicely. Do I recommend the set? You know, if you still have that Toys R Us Cyclops, I don't know that you really need this 2-pack all that badly. So maybe it's worth a skip. As for the basketball set, Rogue's a lot of fun, and Gambit's fun in his own right too. But yeah, the articulation on that Gambit figure is really starting to bother me, the more I pose him around. But it's such a fun idea. Even if Hasbro was only going to go halfway and reuse old parts, I'm glad they went there at all. We didn't have to get a basketball 2-pack, but they gave it a shot, and I'm glad to have them. If you think it's worth it to you, go for it. And thanks for joining me today, toy fans. I know it was kind of a long one this time, and I hope you enjoyed following along. If you did, go ahead and give this video a like and share it with your friends. And let me know in the comments below, which of these 4 figures was your favorite from the set. You guys can always keep up with me at D21Beast, and I'll see you guys next time, mon ami.